think it is.
The thing is, when it's big like that, it have all of the product on it.
Hmm. It's like we're having issues. All right, we'll live. I don't know if we're connected to Facebook, but Ken, could you give us the overview of Florence and where it is and what has happened overnight?
Yeah, overnight about 7:15 this morning that we had landfall right near Wrightsville Beach, but we're moving so slow. The center of the system kind of drifting a little bit, wobbling as we speak with time, so really not moving very fast. And it's really put places like Wilmington right in that eye wall for a prolonged period of time. So that means some of the highest winds, very damaging winds right around the center there in Wilmington. But the other part of it is we're really looking at some of these rain bands stretching far away from the center and actually seeing some of these systems, these storms actually producing tornadoes. So that's something that another one of these threats. We've got the water as the main threat, but a secondary threat without a doubt is the wind and some of the tornadoes in those rain bands.
And what kind of havoc has Florence already wreaked out in these regions? Wilmington has been battered since at least yesterday afternoon. I mean, what are we starting to see on the ground?
Yeah, it's one thing to start seeing, the winds. You start looking at hurricane force winds, but the problem becomes, a lot of the destruction occurs when it's prolonged. So that whole area has been under these winds for a long period of time, which is dangerous. But the other big factor is we are getting confirmation of some of this storm surge, the water pushing inward, and that's the leading cause of fatalities in these systems. And this was the forecast, and still remains to be the forecast. Right along where we have the eye, 4 to 6 foot. I mean, just a lot of water. But look as we travel further away, 7 to 11 feet, 6 to 9 feet, even as far north as the North Carolina-Virginia border. But here's what we need to talk about, something that's really, really dangerous. Look how far inland we have a forecast right there, 7 to 11 feet. That's one of the big problems that we have with this, because you start having prolonged hurricane force winds, and what happens is it really pushes the storm surge in some cases miles inland. So you have these rivers that normally flow outward, and with storm surge it goes right over the barrier island. These rivers actually flow backward and start piling up the water. New Bern area that we were talking about for days, some of these areas getting a lot of storm surge, and the other problem is all the rainfall. So when the rainfall happens, it tries to drain, actually gets blocked up by the storm surge, and you get catastrophic flooding.
And can you explain, it seems like the storm is going to be there for a while, and then what's going to happen next?
Yeah, a slow progression. Let's look at that forecast. It really hasn't changed a whole lot. We saw it on radar just slowly right along the coast, kind of wobbling a little bit, moving southward. But I mean, look at this. I mean, there's not a lot of movement with time. This morning we have the hurricane right here. Look with time. We're still a hurricane, and finally becoming a tropical storm by, this is tomorrow afternoon, Saturday afternoon. So we're going to have prolonged periods of time with these hurricane force winds and the onshore flow, keeping some of that water up. And that's dangerous, because some of these areas may see a delayed reaction in some of the high water. So if it's not happening now, just be patient. It could happen, but without a doubt, large and slow systems are a nemesis. In this case, we have a slow system and we have a large system, so a very dangerous hurricane.
And what have been like the highest wind speeds that you have seen so far?
Yeah, we've had gusts, looks like when we made landfall estimated at 90, but we've had gusts higher than that. So I mean, that's a big part of the story, is the wind. But the other one, when we look at this forecast, this is a big problem as well. Moving so slow like this, you can have prolonged time with these strong winds, and the more you saturate the soil, and we saw on radar how expansive that rain is, the longer we have that rain, and combine that with the wind, it knocks down a lot of trees, and you start seeing power outages, trees down well inland. And look at, we talking about that rain. I mean, we talk about not just a coastal event. It's not. I mean, look how far inland we have some of this rainfall. Looking at Charlotte, Asheville getting into some of this rain, but Charlotte 10 to 15 in some of those regions, even further north stretching into Virginia, potentially 6 to 10 inches. So remember, we talk about this, it's such an important point. Depending where the system moves, and these little jogs make a difference downstream, some of this value could change. So if you're sitting there right at the edge, that could change. You could be put in a higher amount of rain. So that's where we got to be careful, and you get dangerous flash flooding, especially if you combine it with the hills, the terrain, the mountains. You can very dangerous flash flooding well inland, and also possibly mudslides.
How does Florence compare, let's say, to Irma? Since we're here in Florida, is there a way to compare storms, but how does it compare?
Yeah, I normally never like to even do that. It's one of these situations that every one of them are so completely different, and you know the effects are different, the speed is different, and so really the way to look at this is, you know, comparing different storms. You have a situation that you can get hit by a system and be right at the edge and think you went through it, but you didn't. So really we like to say they're all different, and that's why we spend so much time here at the Hurricane Center on those impacts, and actually the impacts are actually independent even the category. The category is just talking about the wind. It's not talking about the rainfall. You know, we talk about even a Category 1 could produce massive storm surge. It's about size and it's about speed.
And before we wrap up, other storms that you're tracking, any of them pose a threat to the United States?
Yeah, let's look at it. Let me scroll down. I mean, it is an active map. You know, we go ahead and see some areas that we're looking at. Of course, Florence. We have Tropical Storm Isaac and a couple tropical storms out in the Atlantic, Joyce and Helene. So we're watching that, and a little area disturbed weather that could produce a little bit of rainfall, possibly getting some areas with some flooding over there as well. So if you think about it, the Atlantic is very active right now. So not just a team back behind me watching Florence, but we have other desks here looking at the other systems as well.
And what is the forecast for Isaac? I think people in Florida are still a little freaked out by it. What can you tell us?
It's beyond the forecast point, so we're still looking at it now, but slowly but surely progressing towards the west, and they start getting into the outliers of a time here. So it's going to take a little time before we can really see where this Isaac's going to go. So stay tuned for that. And the big reminder here is we're in the peak of hurricane season. So all this is going on. We need to keep prepared. Anywhere along the coast this time of year, just preparedness is everything, and now's the time to make sure